Yeah, another very lovely evening out there to all of you, my dear friends. Let's quickly just jump right into part 2 of this judgment on Babylon. Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me, a destroying wind, and will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Now, of course, we know that in the immediate context, the Lord is speaking on the Persians, King Cyrus, and Darius. We'll get into a little bit of info on the Medes right here in just a second. Over there's Babylon. They'll join together and crush them. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow, and against him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, or his armor. And spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah of his God, of the Lord of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, catch this, flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. Now, for any of you who know the book of Revelation, you'll recognize the very similar language right here. Flee out of the midst of Babylon. And once again, as we've already went over dozens of times, how this is the immediate context is the Lord is speaking of the city of Babylon. But in the overall, the bigger part of the prophecy points to these last days and how the whole world has become the spirit of Babylon. Recall to mind what it says in Revelation, I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues, for her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Same language right there. Flee out of her, my people. Now we're seeing how God is speaking to the whole world in Revelation 18. And he says, Come out of her, my people, that you be not partakers of her sins. Now that's not meaning the rapture. That's just meaning don't partake in the evil that is happening. Now we're already raptured at this time and everything, but this is right before the second coming of the Lord. But notice right here, for her sins have reached unto heaven. Isn't that something? They tried to build a tower in Babel all the way up to heaven to escape the next flood, it's thought, in the writings of Josephus. But right here, for her sins have reached unto heaven. So the tower didn't make it because God confounded the languages of the people. The tower didn't make it, but her sins have reached. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that made all the earth drunken. Pay attention to this language. Babylon's been a golden cup. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. You see the same language right here. Babylon is fallen, In the book of Revelation, Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain. If so, be she may be healed. Now, just take real quick, this golden cup. The golden cup points to the splendor of Babylon outwardly as a vessel made to honor, but the wine in that cup was poisoned, intoxicating men with wild ambitions and dark idolatries. The same image reappears once again in Revelation 14 and 17, save that there the golden cup is in the hand of the harlot that sitteth upon the beast, whose name is Mystery, Babylon the Great. And it's filled with the blood of saints, and here she is drinking it. Now, right here is a very interesting verse. This is the people of back then that you can easily apply it to, but you can also probably apply it to those in whom are being saved during the 7 years of tribulation. Once again, we're raptured up, but there are many people being saved, preaching the gospel. The raptures occurred. Really, it seems like it would be easier to convert people after such a dramatic event had occurred on the earth. I don't know, probably not. But we see right here how these Jews are saying, we would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake her, and let us go every one into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. The Lord hath brought forth our righteousness. Come, and let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. And that reminds me of the second coming of Christ as well. The Lord hath brought forth our righteousness. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord hath raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes. Notice how specific this prophecy is. This was about 70 years before the Medes ever attacked Babylon. in order to conquer it. For his device is against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. Remember how Nebuchadnezzar destroyed, or his soldiers destroyed, the temple, Solomon's temple, whenever they took the people captive? About a month later, they destroyed the temple. Well, the Lord remembers that. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare the ambushes. For the Lord hath both devised and done that which he spake against the inhabitants of Babylon. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. The Lord of hosts hath sworn by himself, saying, Surely I will fill thee with men as with caterpillars, and they shall lift up a shout against thee. He hath made the earth by his power. He hath established the world by his wisdom, and hath stretched out the heaven by his understanding. I love this about Jeremiah. He seems to have the heart of King David whenever he starts with these like Psalms. It sounds so much like the Psalms, but it's written by Jeremiah. His heart's greatly moved. He hath made the earth by his power. He hath established the world by his wisdom, and hath stretched out the heaven by his understanding. When he uttereth his voice, there is a multitude of waters in the heavens, and he causeth the vapors to ascend from the ends of the earth. He maketh lightnings with rain, and bringeth forth the wind out of his treasure. Now, why is this being said? Because this even harkens back to Jeremiah 10. It's not the first time Jeremiah said such great epic things, but it's because compared to these idols, the Lord is this much greater. Every man is brutish by his knowledge. Every founder is confounded by the graven image, meaning the man in whom made the image, this false idol. The man who made it, he becomes even confounded. For his molten image is falsehood, and there is no breath in them. They are vanity, the work of errors. In the time of their visitation they shall perish. Can you imagine making false gods your entire life and then standing before the true God? How absolutely petrifying. Even the one who makes the idol is ashamed of what he has done. The portion of Jacob is not like them, meaning God. He is not like these false idols, for he is the former of all things, and Israel is the rod of his inheritance, which is probably pointing to the scepter. God says, I make of ye kings and priests, and it's when they inherit God and God inherits them. You see, we inherit God and God inherits us. It's very lovely. It's very reciprocal. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war, for with thee will I break in pieces the nations, and with thee will I destroy kingdoms. And with thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider. With thee also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with thee will I break in pieces old and young. And with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. Notice how specific God is. He's seen all this, and you can tell his frustration is just spewing out. He's just angry beyond anger. I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd of his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers. And I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord. Behold, I am against thee, O destroying mountain, saith the Lord, which destroyest all the earth. And I will stretch out mine hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and will make thee a burnt mountain. And they shall not take of thee a stone for a corner, nor a stone for foundations, but thou shalt be desolate forever, saith the Lord. Now, pretty much across the board with the commentators, they agree that this sounds much more like a volcano, which by its flames, this destroying mountain, a volcano which by its flames and hot lava streams destroys the whole land. A burned out mountain of which the crater alone remains. Such was Babylon. Set ye up a standard in the land. Blow the trumpet among the nations. Prepare the nations against her. Call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Minni, and Ashkenaz. Appoint a captain against her. Cause the horses to come up as the rough caterpillars. Prepare against her the nations with the kings of the Medes, the captains thereof, and all the rulers thereof, and all the land of his dominion. And the land shall tremble and sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. They don't want to fight in Babylon. They have remained in their holds. Their might hath failed. They became as women. They have burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. One post shall run to meet another, and one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. So they're running up and telling Belshazzar at that time, everything is being destroyed. But this also has a feel of whenever the Antichrist is ruling over this mystical Babylon in these days, whenever the Antichrist is ruling, how people will be running up and telling him everything's being destroyed, especially at this great earthquake. There's supposed to be an earthquake that has never been before on the earth, nor will it be ever again after that. It'll be so terrible that it actually crumbles all the cities of the world, all the walls, all the buildings. And I believe that, it's going to take, probably a few hours for it to really do its work. But while it's doing it, I believe that the Antichrist is going to be hearing about this. The people are forborne to fight. They don't want to fight, even the mightiest of them in Babylon. Right here is a picture of Cyrus, King Cyrus the Great. The year before the siege of Babylon, the year before, Cyrus overthrew Belshazzar in battle, in an open field battle. Whereupon his army retreated within the walls, where they were shut up by him and besieged. Afterward, when Cyrus did enter the city, he ordered public proclamation to be made that all persons should keep within their houses, and whoever was found abroad should be put to death, and threatened to set their houses on fire if any offered to hurt the soldiers from the tops of their houses. So the mighty men, they don't want to fight. The people are held up in their houses. We know historically all this did happen, and that the passages are stopped, and the reeds they have burned with fire, and the men of war are affrighted. For thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, the daughter of Babylon, the people, is like a threshing floor. It is time to thresh her, yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. And now the Jews are pleading with the Lord, basically. Nebuchadnezzar the king of Babylon hath devoured me, he hath crushed me, he hath made me an empty vessel, he hath swallowed me up like a dragon, he hath filled his belly with my delicates, he hath cast me out. The violence done to me and to my flesh be upon Babylon, shall the inhabitant of Zion say, and my blood upon the inhabitants of Chaldea shall Jerusalem say. Therefore thus saith the Lord, behold, I will plead thy cause, and take vengeance for thee, and I will dry up her sea, and make her springs dry, and Babylon shall become heaps, a dwelling place for dragons, an astonishment and a hissing, without an inhabitant. Now I want for all of you to observe this right here. How the Lord says, and I will dry up her sea, and make her springs dry. Now, that didn't happen back then. This must be pointing to what is said in Revelation, which you can see right here. It actually flowed through. They made a passage where the river would flow through the city. And it did not dry up at that time, but the prophecy in Revelation, it says that the river Euphrates it'll be dried up. And then out of it shall arise 4 fallen angels. They'll rise up out of it, and then they'll go out and gather an army together. They shall roar together like lions. They shall yell as lions' whelps. And their heat I will make their feast, and I will make them drunken, that they may rejoice and sleep a perpetual sleep, and not wake, saith the Lord. I will bring them down like lambs to the slaughter, like rams with he-goats. This is very terrifying. The Lord says, I'll give them really good days. If you'll remember, at the time of Belshazzar, they were celebrating within the land of Babylon. They were celebrating while the enemy was infiltrating, and suddenly many of them died. How was Shishak taken, another name for Babylon? And how is the praise of the whole earth surprised? How is Babylon become an astonishment among the nations? The sea is come up upon Babylon. She is covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. Her cities are a desolation, a dry land and a wilderness, a land wherein no man dwelleth, neither doth any son of man pass thereby. All of this just shakes me to the bone, because in Revelation you see the full picture laid out. And we've already went over the book of Revelation. Y'all can check that out, anyone in whom hasn't. But if you followed me through that study, then you'll know why I'm so emphatic about continuing to point to these latter days. And how is the praise of the whole earth surprised? The whole earth now surprised. I highly doubt that back then, people far off, they probably didn't even hear about Babylon falling. But in these days, we're told in the book of Revelation about how the whole earth sees the just destruction of all the cities, New York, Los Angeles, the UK and England, and all of these just falling and collapsing all apart. And how the merchantmen look upon all that they've built up, and all of their golden goose, and how they would always make their money, and how they're just shocked at how it's all gone. And I will punish Baal in Babylon, and I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he hath swallowed up, and the nations shall not flow together any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. My people, go ye out of the midst of her, and deliver ye every man his soul from the fierce anger of the Lord. Now, what's being meant right here, real quick? All that Baal had swallowed up, meaning all that the Babylonians had taken, they'll have to give up. Because they would praise their false god, Baal, upon capturing cities and upon taking slaves and conquering. They would praise Baal. So Baal has to give it all up. And lest your heart faint, and ye fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come in 1 year, and after that in another year shall come another rumor, and violence in the land, ruler against ruler. Sounds like what Christ said, nation against nation would rise up, you see. Therefore, behold, the days come that I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babylon, and her whole land shall be confounded, and all her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Then the heaven and the earth, and all that is therein, shall sing for Babylon. For the spoilers shall come unto her from the north, saith the Lord. As Babylon hath caused the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. Ye that have escaped the sword, go away, stand not still. Remember the Lord afar off, and let Jerusalem come into your mind. This is just filled with stuff pertaining to our day. I'm just going to go over it very quickly. You all already know it. Then the heaven and the earth and all that is therein shall sing for Babylon, because it is fallen and fallen. And if you'll remember how all of us will be rejoicing, how Babylon is finally destroyed, and all the earth's evil is finally destroyed, and God's wrath is taking care of it. And then we come right down here about... Notice, as Babylon hath fallen, the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. Now, how in the world, in one city of Babylon, at that time, could you have found the fallen and the slain of all the earth? No, that can only pertain to our day, how all the earth is Babylon at that day. We are confounded because we have heard reproach. Shame hath covered our faces, for strangers are come into the sanctuaries of the Lord's house. Wherefore, behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will do judgment upon her graven images, and through all her land the wounded shall groan. Now, what's being meant by the strangers going into the Lord's house? Well, they went in, they destroyed the temple, but it's also, I believe, pointing to the third temple that'll be built here very soon. It'll be built, and then the Antichrist walks up in there. A stranger walks up in. Though Babylon should mount up to heaven, and though she should fortify the height of her strength, yet from me shall spoilers come unto her, saith the Lord. A sound of a cry cometh from Babylon, and great destruction from the land of the Chaldeans, because the Lord hath spoiled Babylon, and destroyed out of her the great voice. When her waves do roar like great waters, a noise of their voice is uttered. Now, if you'll see right here, you may be saying, well, what are the spoilers if this is pointing to the last days, Stephen? What are these spoilers? Well, if you'll remember how whenever the Lord comes back, then the Jews actually, they're being attacked from every side. They're almost completely annihilated at the Battle of Armageddon. And then whenever they see him upon the Mount of Olives, they actually turn and fight for him against the evil Antichrist and his armies. So I believe that that's what this is meaning, the spoilers. And then the Jews will get to go out and take their riches from them. We've already went over all of this. So it's very easy to see how Cyrus, whom conquered Babylon, how he's a type of Christ. He goes in, conquers Babylon, and then sets everyone free. Not only does Cyrus set the Jews free, though, but he actually makes a commandment for all the people to go back and rebuild the temple there. It's quite fascinating, being a type of Christ. He says, now you all go and make sure the temple is built. And we know that the Lord actually rebuilds his own temple upon the earth at that time. Because the spoiler has come upon her, even upon Babylon, and her mighty men are taken. Every one of their bows is broken. For the Lord God of recompenses shall surely requite. And I will make drunk her princes, and her wise men, her captains, and all her rulers, and her mighty men, and they shall sleep a perpetual sleep, and not wake, saith the King, whose name is the Lord of hosts. Thus saith the Lord of hosts, the broad walls of Babylon shall be utterly broken. And man, what thick walls that they had. Their walls of the city of Babylon was just something to behold themselves. The broad walls of Babylon shall be utterly broken, and her high gates shall be burned with fire, and the people shall labor in vain, and the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. This right here is an artist's rendering of what they think that the walls may have looked like. Just enormous, absolutely enormous. Impenetrable. And it's not just the outer walls. There were layers of walls. Once that you got through one, you'd have about 6 or 7 or so more layers just to get through of the same kind of walls. According to Herodotus, the walls were 90 kilometers long. That's 56 miles long. 24 kilometers or 80 feet thick. 80 feet thick. And 320 feet or 97 kilometers tall. Now, this is according to Herodotus, but it is believed that he was exaggerating these dimensions. However, Antipater says that the walls of Babylon were 10 miles in length and 25 feet thick, towering over 320 feet into the sky, and seemingly corroborates Herodotus. Now, that's a football field length tall. One of the great military accomplishments of Cyrus the Great was his siege of Babylon in 539 BC. He was able to take the city by diverting the Euphrates River upstream in the north, which lowered the water level enough that his soldiers could walk right through it, as you'll see down here, a depiction. At night, his army snuck right underneath the metal gates and sieged the city before anyone even realized what had happened. Now I want for you all to take notice of these closing verses that Jeremiah says. The word which Jeremiah the prophet commanded Seraiah, the son of Neriah, the son of Maaseiah, when he went with Zedekiah, the king of Judah, into Babylon in the 4th year of his reign. So the king of the Jews at that time, the final king, Zedekiah, he actually traveled to Babylon. And this Seraiah was a quiet prince. So Jeremiah wrote in a book all the evil that should come upon Babylon, even all these words that are written against Babylon. And Jeremiah said to Seraiah, when thou comest to Babylon, and shalt see, and shalt read all these words, then shalt thou say, O Lord, thou hast spoken against this place to cut it off, that none shall remain in it, neither man nor beast, but that it shall be desolate forever. And it shall be, when thou hast made an end of reading this book, whenever you get done reading it, that thou shalt bind a stone to it. Now listen to this. And cast it into the midst of Euphrates. And thou shalt say, thus shall Babylon sink, and shall not rise from the evil that I will bring upon her, and they shall be weary. Thus far are the words of Jeremiah. That's so intriguing to me. Any of you in whom know the book of Revelation know what I'm about to cite. In Revelation 18:21, we're told, "And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone, and cast it into the sea, saying, Thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down, and shall be found no more at all." Just like what Sariah is being told to do right here. Take this book and cast it into the Euphrates. Well, we see right here a stone, an angel taking, in a larger sense, taking and casting for the mystical Babylon of our day. So I believe I've made a pretty firm case in saying that the reason why we have the words of all these prophets is because we need to read them in these last days. In order to get a full picture of what Revelation is saying, we have to know that what it says in the Old Testament. Jesus quotes the Old Testament prophets constantly. These judgments are just a firm showing that we have to know these just like they had to know them back then. Just as important. I thank you all for joining me again, my dear friends. Lord willing, we're going to be picking up on the final chapter of the book of Jeremiah, the longest word-for-word book in the Bible. Some 33,000 words, and tomorrow, Lord willing, we're going to be completing this Bible study. I thank you all for joining me. Lord of peace be with you all. Amen.